Today, I've got a pretty long Slava game here for you, and if you know me, I love these long down-to-the-wire games where it really comes down to individual plays and working with a few teammates to fight off the remaining enemy ships. But to start with, of course, Slava is such an incredible long-range battleship that we have to do a little bit of sniping. And since there's carriers in this game, it's pretty much perfect for us since, well, our ship is really good at these long-range shots. It's quite easy to lead, and of course, these shells retain a ton of pen at these long ranges. So we can reach out and hit almost anyone for a lot of damage, if we get some citadels. The downside of Slava shells, though, of course, is their relatively low damage and really no overmatch. At this tier, 406s aren't really the best in terms of overmatch. But at least we are even able to target superstructures, for example. This is something I have talked about in the past, but if you don't have overmatch, just shoot superstructures. It's basically that simple. And you can still do tons of damage, as I get 11,000 out of that Republic. It's kind of crazy how much damage these superstructures in this game take, but definitely use that to your advantage if you don't have overmatch. But this is a really strong position for us to be in. I'm able to shoot across the entire map and hopefully help my teammates on the 1, 2, 3 lines potentially take that side of the map. Since I do have a lot of teammates there, it's likely the enemy ships are going to try and angle to them. And that's going to give me broadsides. That's why in a lot of these battleships at tier 10, where I have the range to shoot across the map, I'm probably going to be trying to do that. If you look just in front of me, I guess, at the Montana, for example, he's angled perfectly bow in to me. There's really not a lot I'm going to be able to do against him, so there's not much point in me shooting him. And the same can happen on the opposite sides of the map, and that's why I'm looking for those shots. If there was someone on my team looking at the Montana that's in front of me, but they were, let's say, one of the battleships in the B cap, they would be getting broadsides. That's the whole idea here, is the ships are more likely to angle to the ships that are closer to them. So if you're far away, you're probably going to get some broadsides. And Slava, of course, is one of the better ships against broadsides at these ranges. Unfortunately, this Conda doesn't quite finish his turn. It is a really long-range shot, though, so it's possible we just didn't lead quite enough. But it still is the Slava's absolute strength to be taking these long-range shots. And honestly, this D-cap area tends to be a bit of a stalemate anyway, and I can always focus my attention here if the time comes and I'm required to do that. But the main objective here on this map, at least in this iteration, is to focus on the 1, 2, 3 lines. That is the key here. Generally, teams are going to get stuck in around the D-cap here. You can see how there's just radar cruisers, secondary battleships, all just lining up on this main middle island here and just waiting for the enemy team to push. And if both sides are just waiting for someone to push, it's probably just going to be a pretty boring stalemate. And that's where this flank around the 1, 2, 3 lines generally opens up the D-cap, since all these broadside shots that come through from the 1, 2, 3 lines on the enemy team at the D-cap tends to soften them up, and then the team can push that has the advantage. So that's why I think the 1, 2, 3 lines are actually incredibly powerful and important on this map, and it's really not something that we want to give up. And that's why I am also focusing a lot of attention there. Already done 50,000 damage into those guys on the 1, 2, 3 lines, and that's probably enough to soften them up, I hope, for my team to deal with. A few kills come in, traded back and forth here, but really it's just the opening stages of this game. First 5 minutes, especially tier 10 with carriers, and yeah, it's probably going to be a long game when you see those kind of matchmaking, and your teammates are playing reasonably smart, not overcommitting, that kind of thing. And it's a fun thing for me for these games to go down to the wire, but at the same time, I do find some of these long-range sniping games can get a little old after a while. It's not the most enjoyable experience all the time. This Schlieffen, of course, very good in close range, and probably has gotten a little impatient, I should say, with how some of these games are going. I have definitely felt that as well, and I just want to push in a Schlieffen as well. But unfortunately for this guy, he's pushing in between a Montana and a Slava, so he really can't angle to either of us and survive, essentially. Our Monty is actually close to going down, so he might be doing okay, but pushing solo around this corner, well, all those guys waiting for the push through the decap are just ready for him to push around this island as well. So that's why this push doesn't work out quite as well, since most people are gearing up for a push from this flank anyway. That's why I don't find the 9-10 line quite as valuable as the 1-2-3 lines are. It's important to notice that as we're dealing with this Schlieffen, our team has given up the 1-2-3 line, and that's going to come back to bite us here in a little bit. And our Paulo is actually sneaking through to try and rob the bank, as we call it. Take the enemy's home cap very early on in the game. And hopefully he'll be able to do that, since the points are definitely not in our favor right now. I'll pop my repair since I'm pretty confident my salvo is going to take out the Slava, and of course or the Schlieffen, I should say, and it does. So since we can make use of that 15 seconds of immunity from fires, I figured that would be an alright risk to take. Maybe not always, but since we're on a double fire, it takes away a lot of HP very, very quickly. It's important we clear this flank, though, before dealing with the 1-2-3 line. The Nevsky and the Kondo will take a bit to get into the B cap, so it's important to look into this Harugumo and try and take him out. Of course, a battleship at long range isn't the best option for dealing with destroyers, but a Slava is pretty accurate, and of course my team is relatively focused on that Harugumo. It's always a good idea in these games that you know are going to go long to just ping the carrier if you think he's going to be in a bad position. I just say one time, get back. I don't really like to spam chat messages like that. They can get very, very annoying. So I just do one and then leave it. It's up to my teammates if they're going to pay attention to these or not. And I'll ping again at the Nevsky just once, and hopefully my team is going to notice. I'm hoping that since my team has such a strong position around the decap, as you can see, it's still just a stalemate. They're going to turn around, back up, use the island as protection from the Montana and the Missouri that are potentially pushing. And we can all focus out this Nevsky together. It's really important we don't lose this cap, actually, since we're down on points and ships are tied right now. But let's be honest, the enemy team has much better positioning than us. We're kind of boxed into one corner outside of our Paulo Emilio, who's, well, on his way to the A-line, I guess. I don't necessarily blame him, since he's probably getting chased by a destroyer. But I think it's really important that our team does focus on the A-cap and the Nevsky here. Our Anakhimov should get away, although Anakhimov showing broadside to a bunch of battleships, while probably being spotted by the Nevsky, is rough. I think we all have seen the Nakhimov Citadel at this point, and if you haven't, it's essentially the entire ship is a citadel on the broadside. It's massive and not very well armored, which is the only real weakness, I would say, of the Nakhimov. Other than that, the actual aircraft power is kind of insane. But at least that one, if you catch it broadside, you're probably going to dev strike it, which I do like. I do like that there is that expectation that if I catch you, you're probably going to die. Unfortunately, it's still just an insanely strong carrier. I think the alpha strike of it is just a little bit too much. And that's kind of, I think, the idea of the rework of carriers. The alpha strike of the RTS carriers was so insane. And then now they've kind of gone back to that. It's a little bit odd to me. But you see, our team has actually been focused on the decap and the people pushing in there, which, fair enough, they're applying pressure, but it now means we've actually lost the B cap. So we're down on, I think we're down on ships at this moment. It's close. The game is going to be close on ships the whole time, but the problem is the enemy team has been ticking caps away much quicker than us, and we've never really had that much control of any capture zones. So we're getting to be in a situation where we're pinned into a corner of a map and we don't have cap control, and those points are just going to keep ticking up. This is something that I'm constantly thinking about in the back of my head. In these games that go long, they go right down to the wire, having a points lead is crucial. This is one of the things that competitive has really, I guess, trained into me, is getting a cap advantage, getting a points advantage is crucial to winning games. You can win so many games just by having a small points lead, even if you don't have the ship's advantage. The points are really all that matters at the end of the timer. So as long as you stay alive and you have a points lead, you're going to win. Our Buffalo, though, does a really great job, actually. I think he got a double strike there, grabbing the destroyer that pushed through sea, as well as the Nevsky. So my team has decided to focus on these cruisers finally. Unfortunately, though, it's a little bit late, but our Apollo has managed to grab the A cap, which is nice. We're about even on the caps right now. The points are not exactly in our favor since the Buffalo just died as well. But it's important to know my positioning here. This is going to be my position for an incredibly long time in this video now, and it's important because I'm limiting who can shoot at me. I was using this island earlier as well to limit the Montana and Missouri from shooting at me while I focused on the Nevsky, and at the same time here, I'm just going to have to limit who has angles on me while I try and deal with a bow in Conda. If you've seen the armor on the Conda, you know there's a lot of 30 millimeters there, so I really have to be careful where I aim. I need to look for his bow, essentially, and the bow is pretty small on the Conda, and these 406s don't really have the alpha, even with the overmatch through his bow. We're not really going to do a ton of damage. And if I happen to miss aim or get some poor dispersion, well, I'm going to hit his broadside and then just bounce off. That's the real weakness of Slava. This long reload, low alpha damage results in a pretty tricky scenario when people who have enough armor to bounce you just go bow in. The Nakhimov comes and strikes us. The Slava actually has surprisingly good AA, probably the best battleship AA at tier 10. So we're able to shoot down quite a few planes before he drops. 3 torps, and with propulsion mod, we are able to out-accelerate and only eat 1 of them. This Conda, of course, is just full YOLO pushing. Probably the smart play since we bounced 5 times off of him there. That's actually crazy. But you notice how he stayed angled to us, and look at how long he's managed to survive, even at close range to a battleship. So Slava really does require those broadsides. It's really, really good against those broadsides, but if people know to angle, or if you just aren't able to position in such a way to catch those broadsides, it's a little bit rough. Unfortunately, there is a Missouri on the enemy team, which means radar, of course. So our Harugumo is stuck in a pretty rough position and is probably going to go down here. So he's getting a couple fires off on the Missouri. I'm trying to think about which ship I should be targeting first, the Republic or the Missouri here. I know my Harugumo is probably going to go down, and since the Republic has been showing a little more broadside, and, well, he wants to get his rear turret into the fight. I don't blame him. I think that's probably the better target to go after, lower HP as well to start with, but my team appears to be focusing the Missouri, so it's not really up to me to dictate what we're going to focus as a team. I can't really control my teammates, so if I see them focusing on a target, even if I think it's the wrong target potentially to focus on, I still should do it. It's much more valuable to clear a ship off the board, even if it's going to take a little bit longer and maybe not as powerful a ship as if we had focused the Republic, for example. It's still important for all of us to focus our firepower on one ship. That's a crucial component to winning games in these kind of clutch scenarios. Something that you have to learn if you're going to play competitive as well. You have to focus with your teammates. Even if it's tough for you to shoot at, it's long range, cross maps, you don't have the best angle, someone's giving you extra broadside compared to that target, someone's going to die a lot quicker if you all focus them, even if it's not the most optimal for everyone to shoot at, compared to everyone shooting the most optimal target. Spreads out the damage too much, and then people tend to live a little too long on the enemy team. That's how you can lose a lot of matches in competitive. So focus fire, focus fire, focus fire. And you can do that in random battles just by being willing to target whatever your teammates are targeting. Not necessarily demanding teammates target what you want to target. So here now, we're all focused on the Republic since that's the only target left. And I think he actually disconnected. I heard something, well, I don't know if I was, this one I actually didn't play on stream. This was just a random game I played in my free time. But when I was streaming last, somebody was talking about how servers were disconnecting some people. So we got a little lucky there for sure. That I think, Republic disconnected. He wasn't shooting, he wasn't moving his guns, so little bit of luck involved there, but it's still a loss coming up. As you can see, we're down on caps and points massively. And since there's only 4 minutes left in the game, there's really no point in going after the decap here. It's what I'm closest to, but even if I cap the point, I'm not going to win the game. That's just how it works right now. So I have to know that I need to kill both ships if we're going to win this game. So it's important to focus on this Alaska. And the Rune, as you can see, is in a good position to focus on the Alaska. I could put myself in a position where I have no angles on this Alaska. And that's dangerous. So I really need to cut back and try and maintain an angle on this Alaska. This Alaska could have won his team the game simply by turning out, showing flat broadside to the Rune, and running away, essentially. There's a lot of opportunities in this game to win, and especially if you have cap and points control, running away is an incredibly valid tactic to win the game. Most people don't really know or don't necessarily consider it, so it does result in the opportunity, at least, for the team that's down on points like we are right now to potentially come back and win these games. Alaska showing a little too much broadside, and we're in a Slava, so of course it's a couple over pens and a Balans. Unfortunately, we're going to get a little unlucky here against the Alaska, and in fact, this entire game, you'll notice no citadels yet, not a single one, and I think I've had some broadside shots, so a little bit unfortunate, but it really just goes to show for myself that Slava doesn't necessarily need to have broadsides and get those citadel hits to be effective. It can just be the consistent damage output that is good enough. I've kind of underappreciated Slava or underrated Slava a little bit because I felt like it relies a little too much on getting those citadels to have good games. This one kind of proved me wrong. So we've already got a Confederate and, funnily enough, a close quarters expert. But you'll notice I'm pushing directly bow in to this Alaska. I don't want to give him the opportunity to hit a ton of my HP out with his armor piercing. The relatively low DPM of Alaska AG is something that I can deal with. And of course, I have a heal remaining. But I'm not using it. I'm not using my heal because I have Kuznetsov. And I want to wait until potentially proccing Kuznetsov to get a massive heal. Sometimes it's difficult to use Kuznetsov's heal because you'll just die before the heal actually ticks through all the way. But that massive combined heal, I guess I should say, is good enough to live through a lot of situations, especially when it's just an Alaska at a Nakamov. The other thing you should pay attention to here is how I've been managing my turrets. I've been really critical and focused on keeping my rear turret looking into this gap, looking into this channel. My assumption or my guess was that this Nakamov wanted to get into this channel to make it very difficult for my friendly Nakamov to kill him. That's my idea here, and that's why I was constantly trying to keep my rear turret focused on the Nakamov here. Unfortunately, again, a couple bounces on the Alaska. I was trying to aim for his upper belt and bow that we can completely overmatch. Unfortunately, we got a couple bounces there. But the fire does tick out. 50 seconds left, and we have to kill this Nakamov. So I'm going to slam it into reverse, turn hard left to try and get these main guns on as quickly as possible. And of course, this Nakamov should have just ran. He should have just sat behind the island that he was at what, C10-ish. There's plenty of things that could have been done differently, but most people don't consider those things. So a defense expert and high caliber coming in as well. And finally, we get some good dispersion at close range. 10k into the Nakamov, and we kill him. We managed to clutch this one out. Without really controlling the caps, without really controlling the game at all from a points perspective, we just managed to kill everything, and we clutch out a win. So Slava can be a pretty solid ship, even in these close range clutch scenarios. 3.2 thousand base XP, and a really good win. As for the commander, I am of course using Kuznetsov, and honestly, the most powerful commander in the game. We didn't really get to see that epic status proc there at the very end where we get to essentially live for free just because we have Kuznetsov here. This Will to Victory is so insane. But since the Slava is a premium ship, it's very easy to slap Kuznetsov on whatever ship we want to these days, as long as it's premium, since you can have skills for battleships, cruisers, everything independently. It's really nice, but this is the build I'm using. Pretty standard tank build. I think it's really important to grease the gears, since the turrets are very, very, very slow on this thing. And then otherwise, it is a pretty standard build. I really like propulsion mod for the increased ability to just slowly move back and forth to dodge shells. It seems to be quite effective at long range. I'm also using range mod since I actually really enjoy those cross maps, but you could definitely use main battery mod 3 for the improved reload. I think that would probably be a better overall build, but I really just love those cross maps. So that's been the Slava, a very, very powerful tier 10 battleship, and came in pretty clutch there. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.